Hey everybody, welcome back to Equity Guru. This is Chris Parry, your founder and life coach. We're talking to Mark Smith from NioCorp, ticker symbol NB. Mark is the CEO and president and executive chairman. You've got a lot of hats to wear, man.
A lot of titles, yeah.
It's I understand the feeling. So NioCorp in a down market where a lot of resources have been struggling, has been kicking much butt. You've had a stock chart that most companies would be really proud of. What do you put that down to?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you for having us on today, Chris. And then let me answer the question by saying it's a lot of hard work. We've got a tremendous number of things going on, and if you think about all the things that are going on, it boils down to we're communicating a lot of information about this project right now. And this project consists of 4 potential product streams that are all critical and strategic minerals. And I think with the EV revolution going on, all of the political sensitivities going on right now, China, Russia, there's just an awful lot of tailwinds behind critical and strategic minerals right now. We're seeing that pretty much across the board. The investor interest level in these minerals is as strong and motivated as I've seen for a long time. People get what we're talking about right now, and that's a very favorable situation for us.
Personally, I think you're being pretty generous towards the sector. There are a lot of companies that are in the critical mineral space that still struggle. But there's something about NioCorp that I think a lot of people, perhaps very serious investors, think as being very genuine and on the cusp of something.
Well, we appreciate that, first of all, because of our culture and our values within the organization. It's all about honesty and integrity. So that we take that as a continuing compliment. We will be that way as long as I'm here. But we have a lot of things going on as well, Chris. We've got some metallurgical work being done up in Canada right now to finalize the rare earth recovery process and demonstrate that at a demonstration scale plant on a continuous processing basis. A lot of that work is really starting to show what we thought it would show, bottom line. We've got a lot of experience in rare earths, and so we had some pretty high expectations, and I'm happy to report that those expectations are coming along just fine. So we're continuing to report that. We just held a very massive town hall event down in Nebraska where we talked to the local people. There were probably over 500 people in total that showed up. There's a couple things that are important on that town hall. Number one, the number of people that showed up. Number two, Governor-elect Jim Pillen showed up. Even though he's just won the election 9 days ago, and his schedule is probably every 5 minutes he's doing something. He took the time to come out to the town hall and let people know how much he supports that project. I salute him for doing that with the schedule that he has. The final point I would make about the town hall is that the questions that the local community was asking us about some of the technology and some of the metallurgy that we're utilizing and some of the geology also, was a really positive feeling to me, because that means that all the communication that we've been doing over the years with the local folks is really starting to stick. They understand what's going on, and they're asking very engaging questions, which we welcome with open arms. So those are some pretty important things. And then, of course, we've got the SPAC transaction that we had announced back in September. We did announce that we filed the S4 for that transaction. That was about 2.5 weeks ago. So we know there's been an SEC reviewer that's been assigned to that, and we're expecting to receive first comments hopefully within about a week and a half. So that process is going. And, as we talked about earlier concerning the SPAC process, NioCorp and the SPAC entity are both SEC reporting entities. And so we don't have the normal SPAC situation where it's an SEC reporting SPAC acquiring a privately held company, and the SEC doesn't know who that private company is. They know both of us very well, and we're hoping for a very quick and thorough review of that S4. Once that S4 is deemed effective, 45 to 60 days later, this process will be done, and hopefully we'll close that deal very successfully. And of course, that's huge for the company. That's a huge potential injection of cash into NioCorp to get this project and the construction undertaken. So we got a lot of things going, but we're pretty anxious and pretty encouraged by absolutely everything we're seeing.
So speaking of that SPAC, it's been widely noted that there's a potentially a few $100 million sitting in that SPAC. Right. That in a perfect world will all be ready for you to utilize. But as SPACs go, one of the rules is when the transaction is ready, people can decide whether they want to go forward or not. Do you have any sense of what's likely in terms of investors in that SPAC? Are they happy that this deal is going? Are you likely to receive a lot of that, most of that?
That would be entirely speculative on my behalf, Chris. So I won't really go one way or the other. We know what the minimum is at 0, and we know what the maximum is. It's about 300 million.
Yeah,
I would say if we watch what's been going on with our share price and GX2 special purpose acquisition company is our SPAC company. We take a look at their shares, our shares, or take a look at their warrants. I would have to say that all the signs are certainly trending quite favorably right now, but ultimately those SPAC shareholders have to make a decision during their special shareholder meeting, and we'll leave it up to them. But we are trying to make sure that we educate as many people as possible. We're having 4 or 5 investor meetings a day right now, trying to educate people on what NioCorp is, what the minerals are, what the markets are. I'm enjoying it because I can't talk about this project enough. And if we could double the number of meetings a day, I still wouldn't be happy enough because I just love to talk about this project. But it's exciting times, and we're very very happy with the progress that we've made so far.
So looking at the ticker symbol, as you mentioned, GXII is the GX2 ticker in the US. Man, I think it certainly looks, to all intents and purposes, like everyone's happy to be in that SPAC. It is just a diagonal line.
That's right. It's doing very well. The liquidity has picked up quite a bit as well, which is also a very favorable sign. So, look, let's keep that momentum going, is what I keep telling our team and the GX2 team. And the GX2 team has just been fabulous to work with. They share many of the same values that we do: trust and honesty and integrity, treating people right. Those are the kind of people we want to do business with. We'll have 2 of the GX2 founders that will come onto our board, assuming the deal closes. We know who they are, and they're going to be excellent additions to the board. It'll just increase the competency of our board of directors. So I'm thrilled. I usually never wish that time goes faster because I always enjoy life right now. But I can't wait till we get to the S4 being deemed effective, and then we get into the really exciting part, the vote.
Now, at the beginning of October, your share chart took a bit of an upward rocket launch. I would say would be pretty accurate, and then a little bit of a dribble downwards afterwards. But you've found a real level here at about $1.20, and it seems like not just support, but it's moving back in that positive direction. I'm guessing that some of the down came from financing paper becoming free trading.
We did have that happen right about that time, so there was more stock available to be traded, and I'm sure, given knowing what we know about the private placement that when those shares were issued, I'm assuming all those people are very happy, and they're probably wants them traded.
80 cents to $1.20 even now. You're up 50% in 4 months in a down market. It speaks to, I think, the effectiveness of your message. The sector that you're in, but I'll go back to it. I think what I hear from people, and I've heard a lot from people about NioCorp, you've got a lot of fans out there that are even out there in the scrub, like taking pictures of you building roads and things. I think it's the moving things forward is the big deal, not just with the SPAC. That's a big deal in and of itself. But jumping like a 2 or 3 year financing phase to get that cash potentially out of that SPAC, it's not something that every company gets to do.
Yeah, we have a lot of lot of people that care about NioCorp, a lot of shareholders that care about NioCorp. We've worked very honestly and openly with a lot of banking entities out of New York and London. And when you treat people right, they treat you right. And lo and behold, this SPAC was introduced to us by a very good friend, and maybe a little bit fortuitous, but I'll take luck from time to time. And again, could not be happier with the situation that we're in right now.
Wise old man once said to me, "Luck happens when you've done the pre-work."
I think there's some truth to that.
So let's talk about the project. I don't know that with the SPAC process happening, you've probably out of necessity had to be a little bit quiet, which is even a better indicator that your stock is up regardless. But what's happening on the ground to progress things forward while you're getting all the T's crossed and the I's dotted?
Well, I think that, one big thing, and you already noted it, Chris, and we had a lot of shareholders that were driving by the highway next to the property that we own, and we started to do some tree clearing and whatnot. That's in anticipation of the actual start of construction, but it also is part of our commitment to the environment. There are some nesting birds in those areas, and you need to make sure that you undertake tree clearing when it's least disruptive to the birds. So, we do those things, and that's why we did it when we did it. But more importantly, we are continuing to work on our simplified process flow diagram. The results from that we're reporting as they come out. Our first report was extremely positive. We're now pulling the calcium and the magnesium out of the ore on the very front end of the process in a much simpler methodology. That allows for everything downstream to be much smaller in size now, because that calcium and magnesium, that could be 25 to 40% of the mass of the ore. Well, we don't even have to deal with that now because it's taken out on the front end. So everything gets smaller downstream. It becomes much more efficient, much more manageable. And that front end work really turned out positive. I mean, it turned out so positive that we're now looking to see if we can sell the calcium and magnesium. It ended up being greater than 99% purity. I mean, that's almost food grade calcium and magnesium. So, we're not going to spend an enormous amount of time on it on the front end, but we're already thinking about, wow, that turned out way better than what we thought. We may have a product here. So, we're going to look at possible markets there.
I've got magnesium clients right now that would be more than happy to talk about how they could take that off your hands.
Well, let's talk about that offline. We're anxious. It's interesting too. The one element that we don't talk a lot about is titanium. Titanium has gone up in price by over 50% in the last year. I mean, it's a very attractive mineral right now as well, and that's largely because over 80% of the titanium in the world comes out of Russia, and needless to say, that's an issue. So, all of a sudden, titanium is taking off as well, and that's actually the highest volume of material that we'll produce at the end of the day. And we haven't adjusted our prices in our economic model at all to reflect that. So, lots of continuing upside. Rare earth prices are they settled in for a little bit. It looks like they're going to start their march upward again as the demand is picking up due to the EVs. I just saw some graphs about 2 days ago showing what actual EV sales are right now, and it's amazing what has happened in the EV world. I mean, I think we all were sitting there saying, is it really going to happen? Is there enough traction there? I think there is. And this EV revolution changes the critical minerals landscape tremendously. The demand side is there.
So on the project side, you're looking at niobium, titanium, as you mentioned, scandium, magnetic rare earths. I guess it'd be easier to list the things that aren't present on your project.
Yeah, it is truly an amazing ore body, but let's go back to the basics here, and we're there because of niobium. Right. That's our primary product. That's what everything was designed around. Everything else is byproducts, and we're in that that interesting situation where our metallurgy, really requires hydrometallurgy, which means we put the ore in solution, and all those byproducts become possibilities because of the fact that we're putting everything into solution. It's easy to pull it out once it's in solution.
So the only niobium being produced anywhere is a little bit, I guess, in Eastern Canada and a chunk down in South America, but the Americans desperately want to supply.
Absolutely.
And you're right there in the middle. I can understand why the governor's showing up. Like if everything goes to plan, you just fixed a strategic issue for the United States.
Many of them actually, because niobium, scandium, titanium, and magnetic rare earth oxides. The niobium, scandium, and magnetic rare earth oxides, the United States imports 100% of what we need in the country. And relative to titanium, it's like 91 to 92%. We have to import titanium concentrates to meet our needs. So there is a reason why these are critical and strategic, and it's largely because they are simply not produced in the United States. We have to import all of that.
Is there anyone closer than you to being in production in and around the U.S.?
Not that we are aware of, and we do keep track of our competitors very closely.
So this is a really big deal. This is something that is going to be important, not just from a profit perspective, but from a security perspective.
Yeah, it absolutely hits the national security lever pretty hard. And keep in mind too that, for instance, the United States Department of Defense stockpiles niobium because there is no production in the United States. So they actually purchase it out on the open market, import it, and put it in the stockpile because it is a very critical element in defense issues.
So I guess when we look at everything that's in place right now, the only real, we know that you've got a project that has a lot of ore. We know that the metals are in demand. The only real risk element going back, say, 6 months was, will you ever get to raise the amount of money you need to get into production? I know that if the SPAC goes ahead, you're most of the way there. I recall that you've also got yourself a little bit of credit on the hook if you need it.
Yeah, we've been working with multiple commercial senior lenders, and we have extremely strong interest from commercial lenders at this point in time. They just kind of got to the point, as you do in a project financing effort, debt and equity are always kind of fighting it out.
Yeah.
That side basically told us, you need to go out and do some more on the equity side, then we'll start taking our next steps. So we've updated all of our commercial lenders, our potential commercial lenders, and they're really happy with this SPAC deal. And we're getting enough interest level, Chris, that if it makes sense at the end of the day to simultaneously do a pipe equity arrangement while we're doing the SPAC deal, we will do that. We just need to make sure that the interest level is high enough to justify the additional legal work and all the things that go into fundraising. But 4 or 5 meetings a day, and they're with some people who are not invested in the project and they're considering investing. We want to provide that avenue for them to come in as well.
So there again, that's that forging luck by being prepared ahead of time.
Yeah.
If you got the go ahead tomorrow to put the project ahead, between the debt and the SPAC, does that get you there, or do you still need a little bit?
Depending on how well the SPAC and possible pipe arrangement work, we may need a little bit of bridging at the end, which is not uncommon in project financing. And we've been talking to 4 different potential, what I'll call mezzanine level funders as well. That's usually a hybrid, a convertible debt or something like that. And we've got a very strong interest level within that category as well. So when we put all of our capital stacks together, even in the minimum case, we think we have enough to put the whole project together and start the construction. But a lot of work to get the capital stack finalized. Yeah.
And then you've always got the opportunity to go back to the markets with another private placement if you needed to
we need to. That's right. And theoretically, the share price should even be stronger at that point in time because of the success of fundraising. And then remember too, when the SPAC deal closes, not only do we find out how much of their trust money comes into our treasury, but probably within about 2 weeks, we'll start to be traded on the NASDAQ as well. And that opens up a whole different level of capital resources that would be available to us.
Mark, it's all happening. Like, do you ever sit back and just sort of think to yourself, I used to be a regular guy?
I think that way every day. Chris, and in fact, I sat back a little bit last night. I just became the grandfather of my first granddaughter.
Hey, congratulations.
So I took a step back yesterday to celebrate that a little bit.
So NioCorp is now the second most impressive thing you've achieved.
Well, I do have a wife too, Chris, so it has to be number 3.
Well, hey, life is going to change in a whole different way for you now. That's a great thing. Look, always when we talk, I find myself there's a pang in the back of my head. It's the journalist pang, yes, where I think I haven't found enough dark stuff yet. I haven't found the thing that makes him go, oh, that question. But I never come up with it with you guys, because honestly, I'm not blowing smoke here, but this is just one of those deals where you look at all ends of it. You try and find the risk element, and the risk elements are those that you would find with blue chip companies. Like, this isn't a will it happen. This is it's in process. Yeah. It's a progress deal rather than a risk deal. And I just think that's, in the Canadian public markets, it's such a rare thing. You normally have that big sort of glowing warning sign behind it all, saying, well, if the price of oil and gas goes down, this thing goes to hell. But I don't see the market suddenly getting disinterested in critical metals.
I agree, Chris. And again, it kind of goes back to one of the things we talked about at the beginning, which is it's a lot about preparation. And I have an outstanding team of people that we put together at NioCorp. We basically dedicated ourselves to de-risking this project to the point where it deserves to be financing. We hit that point. Now it deserves to be financed, and so we're undertaking that effort. But we have a wide open book. There's hardly anything that our company does that isn't posted on the website or publicly filed. The best way to do it is honestly, and we're going to keep doing it that way. And if anybody ever has a question, all they have to do is give us a call or send us an email. We answer every single question that's asked, and it's because we're prepared. We know our project. We know how to get it to the point of production and get it into production, and that's what we're striving for. We need to get these minerals going.
And you've got a neatly pressed shirt, which counts for a lot. That might be something to do with the fact that you're married. Look, Jim, is there anything about this deal that to this day that you think people don't really understand, or just an element of it that you think is worth highlighting that usually gets left out?
Yeah, I think that we've answered all the questions that have come in concerning the SPAC deal. We've had various videos that we've put out to continue to answer questions. We continue to take questions in town halls and over the phone. I think most of the information is out there, and we've got the full spectrum of what can happen on this deal out there so people understand it. But we're going to remain very positive, and we think we've got an awful good project, a really good ore body, and we're anxious to really start that construction now. So, then it becomes schedule and budget constantly. So we're ready for that step, but we know we've got a little bit of work left to do to get that financing all wrapped up. But I like the direction we're going. This financial engineering we've decided to use with the SPAC, I think, the more I think about it every day, the more I'm convinced this is going to be a real winner for NioCorp.
I keep calling you Jim for some reason. I had an interview last night.
Jim Sims is our chief communications officer. And
there we go.
He's out there communicating as much as I am, and does a great job.
We'll edit that bit out. But look, Jim, Mark, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate the way that you're doing it. For us, telling people that a company is interesting only goes so far, especially in a market where things are a little bit trepidatious. But you guys, the runs are on the board. the miles have been run in the race. It's really easy to point people to you guys and say, well, this is going to be bigger at some point down the road than it is right now, with a real level of certainty. The high risk, high reward part of Canadian markets, pubcos, doesn't really apply here. And I think that's honestly a point that's come out of design from you guys more than anything else.
I'm not going to disagree with you at all, and I'm going to thank you for that compliment, because when our team gets compliments like that, that's when we realize that all those hours that we spend, de-risking and analyze additional risks and dealing with them pays dividends at the end of the day. And then just be honest. Just be honest at all times.
Indeed. Well, we'll talk to you again shortly, and hopefully not too far in the distant future, we get some SPAC news, and that'll be a whole other ball game.
Can't wait for that, and look forward to talking then, Chris.
All right, Bob.
Okay. I've been called a lot of things, so almost it's fine.
All right, everybody, that's the Equity Guru CEO interview. The ticker symbol for NioCorp is NB.